What's up, guys? Your agent Tyler Wayrung here, and today is going to be a little bit different than the typical video I put out. This will be more of kind of like a podcast style or storytelling style video where I'm actually going to tell you guys exactly how I went about quitting my W-2 job and pursuing real estate full time. A lot of you guys have reached out and asked. I've touched on this in a few different videos and on different podcasts I've been on. And so since you guys have asked, I felt, it might help someone out there who's on a similar journey as I was on. So kind of got to start from the beginning and just tell my story. So if you're looking for an exciting video with jump cuts and all these different things flashing in the video, this is not the one for you. But ultimately, about a little over a year ago, I quit my, cushy, work from home, 6-figure job, working for a Fortune 500 company. This is like a highly sought after career field that I was in. And so I want to kind of start back at the beginning, talk about how I got into real estate, talk about the journey I think a lot of you guys are on based on some conversations that I've had with a lot of my followers. And then ultimately around the decision to ultimately take that leap of faith, some of the things I did in preparation before I did leave and kind of how things have been over the last year. So if that interests you at all, stick around. If not, we'll catch you on the next video. So around 2016 is when I decided to separate from the United States Air Force and move back to my hometown of Cincinnati, Ohio. Now, when I did that, while I was in the Air Force, I was able to use the VA loan to get started and purchase my first home, right? So my wife and I were married while we were in the service. We were living in a small apartment, and if you don't know, the military gives you a housing allowance to live off base, and they help cover some of your rental costs. Well, the apartment I was living in was getting ready to jack my rent way up. I know this was back in 2013 when houses were just coming out of the 08-09 crisis. So I started doing some math, talking to some people, and I was like, man, I could buy a house and pay less than I'm paying for this small 2-bedroom apartment that I'm renting. And so decided to do that. We bought our first home in 2013. Lived there for 3 years and house hacked it along the way. Had some folks move in. We rented out the rooms. My wife was going to college. I was on the road a lot. I was part of an air crew, so I was traveling all around the world. We didn't need the house all to ourselves, as long story short. But when we knew we were going to be moving back to Cincinnati in 2016 when my tour was up. So that whole time we were renting out those rooms, we saved up. Like we were saving up for a big down payment because when we moved back home, we knew we wanted to plant our roots and start a family back in Ohio. So we had saved up a decent sized down payment for a home when we moved back. And when we did ultimately come back here, we learned that you can actually use the VA loan more than one time. So we found the house we wanted to live in. We got into a VA loan. And if you don't know, a VA loan is 0% down. Like you don't have to bring anything to closing except for, you just sign your name 100 times, sign your life away. So we did that to our home in Charleston. And then when we moved back home, we did it again for the home that we're still currently living in. And so we had this down payment fund that we thought we were going to use for our house to then go start our rental empire, if you will. At that time, I was all in on bigger pockets, trying to chase this financial freedom dream of if I have this amount of doors and this amount of passive income via cash flow, those were all the terms getting thrown around back then. And I was hooked. I was like hook, line, and sinker. We were renting our home in Charleston out. So I did have my small experience of cash flow at that point. And it was actually working great. I think we were cash flowing like $400 a month because I had that 30-year fixed interest rate on the VA loan back in Charleston. So long story short, we wanted more of that. That was my dream to ultimately build up a portfolio to support our lifestyle so that we could kind of both quit our jobs and do whatever we wanted to do. The American dream. So while we were going to do that, I ended up landing a really good job working for, doing project management for a Fortune 500 company, managing software development. So it was a great income, a great overall job and career. I actually really enjoyed a lot of the people I met, a lot of the networks, et cetera. But so I did that for about 6 years, taking that income, and we lived on very low proportion to the income we were making, so that we were taking those funds, investing it into more properties, building up our rental portfolio from 2016 to, I say, roughly 2023. At that time, we got up to about 25 doors at one time. I did have a 12-unit apartment building, some other four units, duplexes. I think I had one triplex. So all in the mix there, we got up to about 25 units. And what I learned once I got to that point, and if you're on this similar journey, not to pat myself on the back or whatever, but it's not easy to go, in that short of a time, starting out with essentially a small down payment fund to get up to 25 units. And the only reason I say that is to share that, I was hustling, grinding, networking, doing everything I could. I bird these out, doing HELOCs, all these things, creative finance, etc., to get to 25 units. And what I learned once I got to that point was I still wasn't very close to the cash flow goal in order to quit my job. So we kind of threw out this, $5,000 number. If we can get the $5,000 coming in every month after we pay all expenses and set aside money aside, so we're talking like pure cash flow, $5,000, then I would feel comfortable quitting my job because, like I said, we don't really live a lavish lifestyle. I mean, we live in the Midwest. You may, have a different number, but that's kind of beside the point. But what we learned once we got to 25 units is we were really, because we were burning everything and because we were using all these creative finance strategies to get low down payments, well, the counter side to low down payments is higher mortgage payments or higher monthly payments. So you can get into these properties for 0% down when you're doing these things, but it also rips away a good portion of your cash flow. So I was pretty highly leveraged with all of these units. And I think on a good month, we were probably right around $3,000 pure cash flow off of these units, which, really isn't great. And I wasn't like overly leveraged. Right? I think I was in a pretty healthy spot, but probably right around that 80% mark. So all that being said, to think about all the hustle grind I put into just getting there, knowing that we were pretty much, just over the halfway mark, was I willing to do this for another 6 years to hustle, grind, really get after it to get up to 50 units is where kind of I projected I would need to be to hit the cash flow goals. And I really just came down to the decision, like, this is not very fun managing 25 units, trying to chase down, am I willing to double that and also continue to burn, at both ends of the candle, trying to go find these deals while the market's going up, interest rates are going up, things are only getting harder to find these cash flowing properties. And that's kind of when I just had the realization, I don't think I really want to do this. I don't really think I want to be an owner of 50 units. And now you might say, yeah, you could, get a property manager, do these things. Well, there's a cost associated with there. So probably the same place I would have to be at 50 units managing by myself, I might need 60, 65 units under property management because it's additional 10%. You could say, well, bring it in-house. Like I looked at pretty much every option across the board. And I also had this other realization along the way. So around 2020 is when, it's getting, that's why, like I touched on before, it's getting really difficult to find these off-market properties or to find any property that made sense. So I had the realization, and everybody in my network had the same kind of aha, is you have to go off market. You have to go find these deals yourself and create deals. You're not going to find these on the MLS like how I bought, my good chunk of my first deals. You got to go figure out a way to get creative and make these deals. I tried to DIY through the off-market deal finding, YouTube University. How do we do direct mail, cold call? Like I've done just about all of those things. And what I learned through all of those stumbling blocks is, unless you really build a repeatable process around doing so, it's not really something that you can build a business around or build any predictability around. So around 2020, I decided to join my first coaching group. And this coaching group was specifically around how to find off-market deals, how to build a business around that, ultimately how to build a marketing business just for finding off-market deals. And when I joined this coaching group, I had a lot of hesitation. I don't know if you've ever done anything like this where you're paying a good chunk of money to be a part of these groups, and you hear so many horror stories around these, internet gurus. You pay all this money to be a part of this course and you get like a PDF download or whatever. So I did all my homework. I found this coaching group that I really did believe in, and it actually did really change my life. So the really great guy that I'm going to shoot a separate video on talking about my experience in that coaching group and some of the coaching groups that I've been in since then. But ultimately, around 2020 is when I found how to consistently find off-market deals. And the reason that's important for my story is when you learn how to find deals and other ways to monetize those deals other than just finding rentals. I started the group to find off-market deals for just my rental sake. But once I got into it, it's really hard to mass market and only buy the deals that you want to hold long term. You're going to find deals that, they need to be flipped, or they need to, they don't fit your buy box essentially. So I had to also, when I got all these deals coming in that didn't fit my buy box for my buy and hold portfolio, I had to figure out how to monetize those and still, create a win-win solution for these sellers that I was talking to. That ultimately is what my goal changed to. I came in with the idea of how do I find off-market rentals? And quickly I decided I really enjoy helping people, right? Bottom line, helping people. But helping people really meant I'm talking to people in these really tough scenarios, right? Like who are the people who are going to respond to a piece of direct mail around sell your house for cash? Most of the time, they're not in the best situation in life. Now, sometimes there are. Sometimes people just want to hit the easy button and sell. But most oftentimes, they need cash quickly. They're getting a divorce. They're in a really ugly situation. They inherited this house that has all kinds of problems. So I became really good at helping people with their real estate, whether that means, I either, buy it, take it down myself, flip it, buy it and relist it, help them just list it. That's also when I became a real estate agent so that I could, give multiple outlets or basically give them the best solution that I thought would work for their particular scenario. So I also became really good at wholesaling. So that's where you kind of find the deals, you match make it with someone who is looking for a flip, and then you make a fee in the middle. And the reason that all that is even part of my story of how I left my W-2 job is around that time when I figured out that, okay, if I need $5,000 a month, I could obviously, I know what the plan looks like to get there with just rentals. But some of these wholesale, like my average wholesale fee was around $9,000. And I was getting to the point where I was about doing a deal a month while I was still working this full-time W-2 job. So I think $9,000 coming in here, or work your tail off, build up this massive thing that you don't even want to manage that's probably going to cause more headache than actually just working at your W-2 job and not really giving that freedom that you're ultimately looking for. So I had the aha, and not to my sake, I had like I said, I'm in this coaching group, all these networks that I had built, having these deep conversations with other people who are on this exact same journey as me. So I'm not taking credit for that. But the realization of, could I just wholesale a deal a month, or find a deal a month, flip a deal every 2 to 3 months? The average flip is roughly $30,000, and you got, higher taxes, etc. But it changed the whole mindset around just passive income, quote unquote passive. Everyone knows now, or at least I know now, if you don't, real estate, managing properties is not passive income. Okay. But so yeah, it changed my mindset from all these units goal that I would have to hit to get that passive income to, how about I just do something that I really enjoy, which is helping all these sellers, finding off-market deals. I'm still in the real estate niche. I really actually enjoy this, doing this. Could I just make my money doing that versus logging on, being stuck on a computer all day, looking at a screen, doing something I'm not I don't really love, I don't really have that passion for. And so that's ultimately the path that I decided to take, was how do I become an off-market deal operator versus building up this passive income financial freedom game, right? So it was around mid 2021 when I figured out that this is the new path that I want to take. So now how can I start preparing to get in a position where I feel comfortable actually making that leap from my W-2 job? So what that looked like for me was getting rid of this 25 unit portfolio that I built up, getting rid of the units that were the highest headache, were the least, profitable, or had the least return on equity. Once you start holding properties for a long time and your equity position goes up, it's not always the best investment to keep your money there, because the return on that equity goes down over time. Yeah, Google that if you're interested, or if you want me to shoot something separate on that, drop that in the comments below around like how I came up with the decisions to sell which properties. But my plan was to get as liquid as possible, so that, off-market deal operation is a very capital-intensive game, right? Like if you're going to flip multiple properties, you got to have the money to purchase, rehab, etc. And, that might take 3 to 4 months. So I want to get super liquid, not only to give myself and my family a personal runway to figure this out, but also to be able to inject capital into this new business venture. Well, not new, this part-time business venture I was already creating, how to inject cash into that so that it would be sustainable to my new full-time venture of spending all my time in that business. So what that looked like was, long story short, going from 25 units down to 3 units where I'm currently at today. This is one paid-off duplex and one single family that has a very low headache factor and decent cash flow on it. So down to 3 units that cash flow decently, but also was able to get me, out of a lot of these higher leverage opportunities and sit on a good pile of cash that helped me with the decision-making process of, if you quit your job and you don't find a deal for 1 year, 1 year target was kind of the runway that I kept shooting for, where it's like, if I had nothing else come in for the next year, would this pile of cash sustain my family? And, everybody's, pile of cash is going to look different depending on your monthly expenses. But again, we live a pretty conservative lifestyle and are actually kind of happy with that. There's not like a whole lot of things where it's like we would go out and do, right? But that's the one thing that most people ask me about, is like, how did you feel comfortable actually making that leap? And part one of that was getting that financial runway and feeling good about my odds of, I feel like the odds of me going 1 year without any income coming in from being an agent, an off-market deal operator, flipper, wholesale, like if I can't do anything within a year, the writing's going to be on the wall probably around like the 4 to 6 month mark. And then I'm going to have another 6 months to either pivot, try to figure something else out, or at least be prepared to go start to look for that next job. And hey, my experiment's over and I'm going to have to go back and find a new day job. So that whole scenario, made me feel a lot more comfortable about making that decision. And part 2 of that was something that I don't think, I'm not the first one that came up with this. I did hear it from someone else. I can't recall their name, but I don't hear this often enough. And which is why I'm going to state it here, but it really did help me. It was, let's look at the worst case scenario. It is around, okay, let's say 4 to 6 months go by. I don't have any deal. I haven't created any income for my family. So I'm going to have to go back and start to look for a new day job. Well, it's like, okay, if I do that, if I find a new day job, then and that's the worst case scenario, is I have to go back and find a W-2 income. That's what's happening, back at the time. I was like, that's tomorrow for me. Like I have to go to work and work this W-2 tomorrow. So if my worst case scenario, if I quit and try this plan, is already what's happening to me every single day. I'm going to work and working for this W-2 employer. So it was like, for me, that's when it became like, okay, you have to do this, right? If the worst thing that can happen is what's currently, you're currently used to, is working every day back in a W-2, and you at least, surely you're going to learn something from this experiment. you're not going to have any regret going forward of what would have happened if I would have took that chance and bet on myself. So for me, at that time, it became a no-brainer. I am a big retrospective person, kind of just meaning I'm always looking back and thinking like, what could I have done different? And I know if I did not do this, the regret that I would feel and have, not betting on myself, like, I don't know if I would have been able to live with that, honestly. So those two pieces of, one, coming up with that financial runway, and two, being okay with that worst case scenario. And kind of the part three is, the willingness to bet on yourself, and knowing that every time I've done that in the past and I have my back against the wall, I've came out on top, because I think only you will know if you're the kind of person that, you kind of have to put yourself in that scenario to really get after it and win. And lastly, this is more of like a comedic factor, but it did play a piece in the puzzle. So, a very short story. I was a project manager, and so if you're unfamiliar, every project you have a different kind of sponsor or someone who's over top of you, kind of really making that decision on how things work for that particular project. I've had phenomenal experiences with every sponsor that I've worked for, except for one. And wouldn't you know, I get assigned to this project around the same time. Like, I'm building this plan. I got to get a couple more properties sold. Like, I'm already putting all the pieces together. But it just so happens that this sponsor and I really butt heads, and which, I can deal with that. I'm a very professional. I have thick skin. I can butt heads and still, get things done. But it was one day, this sponsor, she said something I felt like kind of crossed the line as unprofessional in front of a lot of people, and really just sealed the deal for me, if you will. It was just like, what am I doing? Working for this place, getting disrespected, and yeah, not like I had a great support team and everybody like came to huddle behind me, but it was just one of those moments where it's like, what in the world is going on right now? Like, and so ultimately that's where I just said, like, I came home, talked to my wife, I was like, it's pretty clear now what the plan needs to look like. So had to check a couple other boxes and just put ourselves in that kind of, get those final pieces to tie the bow on the plan, if you will. To really make that happen. So that was in June of 2023. I did formally step away on really good terms, and I did have a phenomenal, bosses, leadership, support team. Everyone around me supported the decision, and I left on great terms. So if you're in this situation, I highly recommend you do the same. It does, some people are like burn the ships kind of people. We don't want a plan B. Like, there's only one path ahead. I guess that's just not me. I did, they were like, hey, whenever you're ready, like, if you ever want to come back, you have that opportunity too. And, I don't know, that just felt like the right thing to do for me. So for what it's worth, you can decide what to do in your particular scenario. But how have things been going? So like I said, it's been just over a year and a couple months now, and I have, the real estate portion, I knew that was going to be the majority piece of it. So I ultimately, my business plan shuffled a little bit, picked up a business partner to handle all of the construction side. That was like my weak area of real estate, is I'm not great at managing contractors and construction plans and things like that. I'm more of a behind the scenes marketing, digital data kind of guy, numbers analysis, more to the agent side of the business. So, as fate would have it, me and this guy just, we've kind of been in each other's network for a long time, but we just happened to come together, cross paths, and it's been great so far. So we just closed on our 9th flip of 2024 is when we really started to pick things up from, it took from June to the end of the year to really put a good plan together, and did more of like an agent side of things for that year. And then also spend a lot of time in another business that really kind of do a lot of the similar roles, run a lot of the operations, the back end management, numbers, financials, etc. for another business that is has another owner that handles the front client facing activity. So, the normal day for me looks pretty similar actually to when I was working in W-2. I get up. I do actually get to put my kid on the bus every morning and take my daughter to school, where it used to be like I have to log in early, take a phone call, client conference call, then I have to check out, rush him down on the bus, rush back, get ready for a meeting, where it's much more relaxed, able to get them off to school at my own time, but I come back home and get after it the whole day while they're at school. But, and I tell a lot of people, I actually work harder now than I did. Everybody thinks like, oh, you quit your job, whatever, it must be nice kind of thing. You always have those kind of people. But I actually work harder now than I did at my W-2. But the positive side is, and like I said, this may be different for everyone, but it's like I get to choose when I put in the work. Sometimes it's during the day. Sometimes at night we put the kids to bed and I got to come jump out on the computer and hammer some stuff back out. And to me, that I prefer that. Someone else may prefer, no, I want to know when have to be at work and know when I'm not. Sometimes I get a phone call now. When you got flips going on, I might get a phone call at night and may have to step away for a minute. But like I said, that fits better with my lifestyle. And I actually talked, my daughter's a little too young, but I actually talked to my son about this. Like, well, would you prefer me, be in a room all day, locked in a box, can't come out because I'm back to back meetings? Or would you prefer, like, I'm kind of always on the clock, but I can, we may go play pickleball and I may have to take a phone call, or I may not. Maybe we get through a whole day, we might get lunch and pickleball without nothing. But it's like kind of that variety piece. And he was, he didn't even have to think about it. He's like, no, this is way cooler, especially like during the summer, able to do much more with them, but also have to get much more creative with how the work gets done. So all in all, it's been a fantastic experience. And I hope that at least something I touched on helps if you are on this journey. The big pivot from the passive income to just how can I build an income source to get me to where I want to be versus how do I have to buy all these properties that kick off enough cash flow to do that? And if you are on that path, I'd be happy to have a conversation with you, and not to deter you, but more of just bring out all of the things that I think I was blinded to. And if you hear all that and you still want to go down that path of building a huge portfolio, that's totally fine. I just, I think I grew up in the era of, when I say grew up, like in my real estate career, of bigger pockets and all their fantasy, not fantasy, someone like probably obviously did some of those things, but they made it feel like anyone could, go from barista to owning 400 units in a year if they really put in the work. And I've talked to enough people to know that it's hard. Like, it's really hard. And especially, macroeconomic conditions, rates, prices, like things have changed. Like that's not really that possible in this market. Now, all that being said, I still love the idea of buying and holding real estate. But now when I buy and hold something, I value the lack of headache factor more than I do crunching numbers and making sure everything gets a double-digit cash-on-cash return like I used to. I bought a property based on what it looked like in a deal calculator versus what it actually does to my lifestyle. So that's if you are just getting started, highly recommend you take some time and think about that. Like, you may get a 30% cash on cash return on this property, but what kind of tenants are going to want to live in it? What kind of area is it in? What kind of deferred maintenance is it going to have? What's that going to do to your lifestyle to constantly get calls and maintenance requests, etc., on something like that? Versus, hey, I might take like a 6% cash on cash in an all brick duplex in a nice neighborhood that you get people that move in and want to live there for the rest of their life. I mean, that's so, I've gotten that before in the comments too, like, oh, he's done with real estate, done buying, see, it doesn't work. It totally works, but you have to look at, I think, the whole picture. Look at real estate holistically with your lifestyle included in that as well, and not just what pro forma it looks like on a piece of paper, because that's a very small side of the story, and most of the time when you put in those deal calculators isn't actually what comes to fruition anyway. So guys, I hope you got some value out of this. I know this is a little bit different. It's a very long video, but I felt like just based on all the questions I've gotten, all the people who've really followed me along this whole journey, I hope I felt like I owed it to you to be, just be 100% transparent and share the real things that have really moved the needle that actually matters in my life, and stop worrying about how you can just be 100% efficient on every opportunity, how you roll everything back into the business and, do things that way. Now it's more of like, what do things feel like? What will this do for our lifestyle, etc. I have to give a big shout out to a really close friend of mine, Kevin Kessler, who I think, and I don't know the exact words he said, but the way I heard it was because, before I decided to sell any property, I was like buy and hold forever. And everything has to go back into the business, back into this snowball to buy my next property with. And it was Kevin who we had dinner one night, and I was talking to him about thinking through this plan, and I was like, but I don't want to waste the principal. If I sell this and I have to use the principal to live on, this while I'm going through this financial runway to, get things started. I was like a big Warren Buffett guy. Never burn the principal, never lose the principal. And he was like, maybe the return on this investment is not something you can put on a spreadsheet. It's something that that can change your life, which is what it ultimately did for me was, not looking at things from just being on paper, but being willing to sell a property, taking those gains, actually spending them to live on, go through our personal expenses, but giving me the time to build up an actual business that I enjoy and that actually can change my life for the better by giving me the time and opportunities to do the things I'm really passionate about and just being present for my family. So, Kevin, you're the man. I love you, brother. And guys, if you got anything out of here, or you feel like I touched on something but just breezed right on it and you want to know more about it, I'm always looking for new video topics. I have more time to do these now. So drop those in the comments below. And if you got anything out of this, I always like hearing about that as well. I do respond to every comment I get personally. I don't have anybody that helps me do that because this is a passion project for me. And I really just like connecting and building those relationships from this channel. But guys, with all that being said, I'm Tyler Wayrung, and we'll catch you next time.